Hypnagogia is defined as the transitional state of consciousness between wakefulness and sleep. During hypnagogia, it is common to experience involuntary and imagined experiences, known as hypnagogic hallucinations. Hypnagogia is what is responsible for that occasional feeling of falling that jolts you right back to awareness. These are referred to as hypnic jerks, and the causes of them are unclear, though there are plausible explanations. For instance, tiredness and sleep deprivation can increase the likelihood of experiencing this phenomenon, as well as stimulant drugs. It is estimated that around 60 to 70% of people experience hypnic jerks, but the number of people that experience hypnagogic hallucinations in general isn't as defined. To be clear, hypnagogic hallucinations are considered normal and common in healthy people, but they are more common in people with certain sleep disorders. Hypnagogic hallucinations may manifest themselves visually, such as seeing things. It could be simple things like blotches of colors, or complex things like people or river streams, auditorily, hearing voices or music, or kinetically, feeling like you are floating. In some cases, the hallucinations might be tactile, feeling someone grabbing you, gustatory, tasting something, or olfactory, smelling something like perfume or smoke. Personally, I have only ever experienced auditory and visual hallucinations while drifting off to sleep, and it's something I find to be extremely interesting. The Ganzfeld Effect. A few years back, I'd learned about something called the Ganzfeld Effect, which is essentially a sensory or perceptual deprivation that prompts your brain to fill in gaps of missing data by inducing hallucinations. To clarify, the Ganzfeld Effect is not wholly related to hypnagogia. In fact, the Ganzfeld Effect can be quite terrifying when compared to hypnagogic hallucinations. When I experimented with this method of induced hallucination, I found myself envisioning my entire being, body and mind, in various locations, such as outside of my school or even underwater swimming with fish. A strange feeling of cognitive dissonance was created because I knew what I was seeing wasn't real, but it was hyper-realistic and convincing, so much so that when I came to, I was surprised to find myself lying in bed. At some point, the experience became way too overwhelming for me, and I had to cut the session short. However, because I am a naturally curious person, I wanted to discover other ways of tampering with my consciousness that weren't so disassociative. It was then that I began researching. Discovering induced hypnagogia. I don't exactly remember how I discovered the idea of purposely induced hypnagogic states, but if I am correct, it started with my fascination with Salvador Dali's The Persistence of Memory. Something about that painting captivates me. The surrealistic nature of it prompts feelings of uncertainty. The image feels distant and haunting. The melting clocks and liminal landscape made me wonder how Dali came up with this. I was a little naive back then and had assumed he was experimenting with hallucinogenic drugs, but upon further probing, I discovered that he had actually induced states of hypnagogia to produce surreal images in his head. As interested as I was, I continued to search for more information about the subject until I learned of Thomas Edison doing the same thing. The two had very similar methods. Edison would rest sitting upward in a chair holding metal balls in his hands, so when he'd fall asleep, they'd drop and wake him. Dali would hold a key over a plate as he rested upwards in a chair, and when he fell asleep, the key would collide with the plate and wake him up. Immediately, I knew this was something I had to try, so I began developing a way to recreate the experience. I searched online to see if other people had tried doing this, which of course they had, and I read somewhere about setting a 10-minute timer to go off in case you fall asleep and don't wake up. I also read that the experience itself actually takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of. Firstly, it's important that you're able to visualize with your eyes closed. This essentially means having control over what your mind conjures up as it drifts away. The best way to exercise this control is by manipulating the phosphenes in your eyes. In case you aren't familiar with the word, phosphenes are the colorful specks of light you see when you close your eyes. They manifest as stars, streaks, or flashing colors. The phosphenes themselves are typically induced by pressure, such as rubbing on the eye that stimulates the retina, but it is normal to see them without pressure. If you really focus your attention on the phosphenes, you are eventually able to control them, either by changing their colors or the directions they are traveling in. The more you practice, the more precise you become. At some point, you'll be able to craft images with them, and honestly, this only took me around 20 minutes to get the hang of, and that is when you're able to begin practicing the induced hypnagogic state, effectively at least. The procedure. For me, the procedure was simple. Like Edison and Dali, I sat myself upright in my chair and I held a spoon above a plate that would wake me as soon as I fell asleep. It is necessary to do this until you fall asleep. As a precautionary measure, I also set my phone's timer to 10 minutes because it was recommended by others, and it took me an average of 8 minutes to drift off to the point of not being able to control my mental state. Because I have a very difficult time focusing if things are happening in my surroundings and outside sounds can overwhelm me, I put earbuds in with white noise playing, an idea I took from the Ganzfeld Effect, and I focus all of my mental energy on tampering with my phosphines. The transition from awareness to hypnagogia is very peculiar. You can almost feel yourself losing your grip on reality. The idea is to focus your thought process on itself, similarly to mindfulness meditation, but it gets to a point that the thoughts become ridiculous and arbitrary in nature. The phosphines you are supposed to work on controlling end up spiraling into chaos, and a multitude of abstract images flourish in place of what you once could understand. If you want to keep track of what your mind is thinking of during this state, it is important to have a journal by your side so that when the spooner alarm wakes you, you can immediately detail your thoughts. To give you an understanding of what I was thinking, I will provide you with some descriptions of my writing following the experience. Journaling. The themes my thoughts surrounded varied vastly. Some were sexual, some were surreal, and some were fantastic. I wrote descriptions ranging from dancing skeletons smoking cigars to images of many buildings bursting through pelvic skin. One image of a walrus being clawed to death by a kitten even appeared. I saw zombie faces twitching on the walls of my room, which were also covered in coarse hair, along with vivid memories from my childhood. In some cases, the things that came to me weren't image-based, but rather detailed wording. In one of my journal entries, I simply wrote down, "Fighting against the riptide of time will only leave you breathless and wishing you never tried." Another one went as follows, "Trying so hard to grab and hold on to nothing, filling my pockets with air." As you can probably tell, most of what resulted was pretty nonsensical, but the point is that it certainly was creative. When I would practice induced hypnagogia, I would typically do back-to-back sessions, and an interesting observation I made was how the themes of the sessions would change. For me, the first session tended to be a lot more abstract and surreal, but the second session would turn out more introspective and reminiscent. I obviously have no answers as to why this is the case, but it certainly is neat. Lucid dreaming. It has been a long while since I have engaged in one of these sessions, but one interesting thing that followed my practice was the ability to lucid dream. Countless times throughout my childhood, I wanted to learn how to lucid dream, and every method I tried was to no avail. However, learning to control what I saw as I closed my eyes served as an excellent segue into the dream world. The best way to describe it is that I was basically able to construct a very clear scene in my head and control it. As I fell asleep, I still maintained the ability, and at one point, I was able to fully control what was happening in my dream world, which turned out better than I ever imagined it to be. It is one thing to be in control of your brain between states of cognition, but to have control over it when it is fully unconscious is remarkable. That being said, I was only able to do this one time since I slowly stopped working on the hypnagogic sessions shortly thereafter. There was no particular reason for this, it was mostly because it took a lot of control and was mentally draining. Possibly important. Something that is certainly worth considering is the possible risks that surround intentional dissociation. An article I read from sleepfoundation.org suggests that lucid dreaming might pose a risk to those who experience psychosis, as lucid dreaming and induced hypnagogia involve metacognition, a type of self-awareness that involves thinking of yourself from an outside perspective. Of course, the concerns aren't fully backed by evidence, but it is always best to stay on the safer sides of things. While lucid dreaming states can help reduce anxiety and depression in those that have PTSD, some research claims that intentionally trying to initiate a lucid state is associated with symptoms of depression, dissociation, and obsessive-compulsive disorder, and schizophrenia. It is necessary to clarify that I am not making an objective claim here, I am merely raising a cause for concern in case someone who watches decides to pursue this practice. In my case, I definitely struggle with dissociation and obsessive-compulsive symptoms from time to time, but I can't conclusively say that my experiences are related to this. Also, this is coming from an article about the dangers of lucid dreaming, not induced hypnagogia. I couldn't find information on the latter. I'm just hypothesizing a link considering the hypnagogic state is largely dissociative. Conclusion. In my opinion, the hypnagogic state is certainly worth experimenting with. If you're looking for something a little more intense, I strongly recommend trying the Ganzfeld Effect. Looking up a few videos will inform you about what needs to be done, but I think the induced hypnagogic state is more worthwhile, considering it potentially opens up the possibility of lucid dreaming for those who practice the techniques regularly. In the future, I would certainly like to make videos talking about lucid dreaming and some of my experiences with dissociation. As for right now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for tuning in. Regarding the future of this channel, I'm going to be straightforward when I say that I am not going to upload frequently. My goal is to produce at least one video a month because I want to ensure that all the content I have in mind is executed the way I intend it to be. I want my videos to be high quality and well thought out, meaning the ideas I have will need to be made clearer. I only uploaded 3 videos in succession because I wanted to offer viewers a brief glimpse into what the future of my channel holds. As you can see from what I have uploaded, the topics are going to cover my personal philosophies and interests. I don't expect everyone to agree with me, and that is okay. I just hope viewers bear with me and stay receptive to what I am saying. As of now, I am planning on making a series of videos related to this idea of creative madness that I tackled in the last video, with the hopes of clearing up and perfecting the idea as I had it. I feel like I overcomplicated things tremendously, and a large reason for that is that I am worried that what I am saying isn't understandable since I have a lot to say, which is why I think it is wise to expand the concept among multiple videos. If you enjoyed the videos I have uploaded, please consider liking and subscribing. I have a big vision for this channel, and it all starts with cultivating a community. Thank you.